Okay, so let's start with the basics. For people unfamiliar with blockchain brawlers, what is it and how does this game work?
Sure. So Blockchain Brawlers is a video game like any other game, but it is attached to the blockchain. And what that means is you can put NFTs into it. It has an in-game currency. There's something called skins. So there's a bunch of assets, digital items that are tradable that you can win and that you can take out of the game and do other things with, like exchange those things for other NFTs and other currencies. So this is something you can't do with a traditional video game. In Google Play and the Apple App Store, they don't allow you to individually own the virtual items. Video games, all the video games of the world, they keep those virtual items. Virtual items you might have spent hundreds of hours to acquire or thousands of dollars to acquire. The rules are those belong to the video game company and they're for entertainment purposes, and you cannot monetize them in any way. So a game that's built on a blockchain allows you, the player, to actually own the items and do with them as you please. That's what makes it really transformational.
So we found out last week that blockchain brawlers earned $350 million in trading volume in just 1 week. Can you talk about the demand that you're seeing for this blockchain-based game?
Sure. So I think the Brawler team did an excellent job of promoting the game to all the prospective players. So they were in the Discord channels. Discord is a communication medium that a lot of video gamers use, and we promoted it. We talked about what brawlers were going to be, and we allowed people to buy little brawler avatars several months before the game launched, and we allowed them to buy it in an auction. So at first, these things, were auctioned off for $100, and a couple $100, and then $1,000, and then $10,000 and higher. And so we could tell people were really getting into it. And each brawler is this unique character. Think of it a little bit like WWE, the wrestling organization. So these are little like figurines, and you go into a wrestling ring with them, and you compete against other brawlers, and you win a prize. This is the in-game currency called a brawl, BRWL. And what was exciting is that brawl token was immediately tradable. And one of the largest exchanges in the world decided to list the brawl token, which I felt was a real testament to what the Brawl team had created, because not a lot of in-game currencies get listed on crypto exchanges. And if they do, it takes a while. But this was literally the day the game launched, they decided to list the in-game currency. And so I think it shows a lot of the reasons why this is a quality game. And people can make real money playing it, but it's also fun. And the characters themselves are very playful, kind of whimsical looking figurines. So it all makes for a standard game, which has the right game mechanics to make people want to play. But this time they play and they can earn.
So on that last point, so far players have earned on average 3,200 Brawl tokens per day, or about $864 US. So obviously the whole play to earn model is certainly a huge incentive.
Yeah.
Are we going to see this average go up? Are you seeing more people treating this as actually a way to earn a living rather than pure recreation?
Oh, there is no doubt people will earn a living doing this. And remember, my partner and I, we created the video game virtual item marketplaces. My partner created the first one 20 years ago, and then we worked on another one together called Obskins, which was the largest skins marketplace in the world. And a skin is a video game virtual item that has no in-game utility. It's strictly a cosmetic. You put it on, it could be a hat your character wears, It could be a pair of high-end sneakers, could even be a tattoo. So it's just some sort of, like, think of it as an article of clothing. It doesn't help you win the game better, but it's a way to show off what you're wearing. Sort of like going with a nice tie or a scarf into a meeting. Probably doesn't make you present any better, but you sure look good while you're presenting. So
Give confidence, yeah.
Yes. And the video game virtual item and skins industry is enormous. Every single year, globally, video games sell almost 200 billion US dollars in these virtual items. Almost none of those can an individual who gets within a game trade for money or barter. Most of the video games prohibit that. And so for 20 years, my partner and I were fighting the video games, and we were like, you guys should want people to trade these, because if you did, in our marketplace, we could share some of the trading revenue from secondary trades. Very few video game companies wanted to do it. I think they didn't like the fact that somebody else was making money on their game. And yet, so many people these days spend so much time in these persistent virtual worlds. They're like cities. There can be several million people a day playing a video game. There are a lot of people who care more about their in-game reputation and personality than they do about their real world reputation. And one of the ways you sort of show off or you display your unique characteristics is by decorating your avatar with these skins or virtual items. So the difference between that world and the blockchain brawler game, as well as the play to earn blockchain gaming phenomenon, is now people can actually trade these items for other cryptos. They can actually make a living if they're good at playing. And considering how much time and how much money people spend on these video game virtual items, 200 billion a year, I think that the video game companies that are going into blockchain, they're going to make as much. They might even make more over time, because so many people would like to actually individually own these virtual items. It's a big transformation. And what remains to be seen is, will the traditional game companies stay doing it the way they do? No one owns the items. You buy them from them. You can't trade them. Or will they eventually say, we got to get into this as well? And so we'll see. But there's a lot of, it's a very big industry.
Let's shift course and talk about the cost of entry for a second. So the floor is $6,000 to be a participant. Do you expect that price to come down, or is the expectation that players will earn their way out of it?
So I'm guessing, but right now, the game just launched a couple of weeks ago. It's very hard to get a hold of a brawler because we only auctioned 1,100. Now, if anybody knows anything about video games, there's hundreds of thousands or millions of people playing these games. But right now, you have to own a brawler, a little figurine that you bought prior to the game launch to play. What's happening, though, is if you have a brawler, the figurine in the game, and you are playing, you can get these purses, the winnings from the matches, and you can use those earnings to create or mint another brawler. So we're now starting to have people mint brawlers. So over time, all of the brawlers that people are minting will allow, I believe, more people to play, because some of the brawlers will be super rare, some will be more common, the common ones will be cheaper. And so what I hope to happen over time is the ability to come in and play with your brawler goes down in price. There'll still be, of course, a lot of these brawlers that are very special, because they were special ones that were minted before the game launched. We have different types of rarities. So there's super rare ones and more common ones. So there'll always be sort of a stratification in the pricing, but there will be more people playing. And my goal is for lots and lots of people to play, to be able to earn these tokens, and frankly, to supplement their income too by doing it and having fun.
And you've also set up a system where gamers who can't afford the cost of entry can actually rent the digital assets that they need to play the game. How does this work, and just how big a part of your growth model is it?
So we will be releasing that soon, is all I can say. But you will be able to basically borrow a brawler from someone else. Think of it like you lease a car. You will lease a brawler, and the rate at which you're leasing it, of course, will be determined by the rate the person who holds it wants. But those people, there's a lot of people who in this world who have money but not a lot of time, and there's people who have time but not a lot of money. Well, if you have a brawler and you're just holding on it as a collectible, might go up in value, right? You want to show it off, but you're not putting it to work in the game. You're missing out on some earnings. Well, what you could do is you could lend this to another player who would be able to play it, and then you would either receive some sort of interest rate, right? Like any other thing, like when you lease a car, and you're the lessor, or I don't know necessarily how it'll work out, but I assume maybe the people who are lending the brawlers will get a percentage of the earnings, right? So it'll be kind of a rev share. There's lots of different ways it could go, and I think since this will be a brand new phenomenon, it's exciting to see how it's going to unfold. But I know for certain by allowing people to lend their brawlers when they're not using them to people who want to use them, maybe when you're in the US and you're going to sleep, people in Asia are waking up, you can lend it to them until you wake up and then you have it back. But it will lead to far more people playing, and it'll lead to a lot more people being able to participate in the play to earn economy. I think it'll lead to a lot more trading of these items as well, which is good for the blockchain. And so there's a lot of things that are valuable and helpful when you allow people to borrow. It's just like how many fewer cars would be bought each year if you had to pay up front? Most people either finance it through a loan or a lease. Similarly with homes, you'd sell a lot fewer homes if you had to pay $500,000 to buy your home. You get a loan, and so I think this is good for the ecosystem.
Has anyone else officially rented out or leased out an NFT yet?
In order to borrow or lend an NFT, it's actually far more difficult than you might imagine. The mechanical aspect of loaning someone an NFT, sending it to them, these are electronic, and them sending it back to you, that's trivial, right? That's not hard. The hard part, though, is once you let a stranger borrow something from you, what if they don't pay you back? So what kind of collateral do you get? And it's not easy to figure out because you don't necessarily know what the value of the NFT is. There's a lot of things that are manipulated. And so if you are going to take collateral as a house for a loan, it's pretty easy because you have comparable properties you can look at. If you are borrowing money to buy a car, the banks all know what cars are worth because there's a lot of them and they're all kind of the same type, right? You've got a certain BMW, you know what that's worth. Well, NFTs are unique and they may not have a lot of trading history, so it may be hard to know what that thing's really worth. I think we've figured out a way to do it that's very safe, and so I think we'll be very successful at it. But I've seen no company do what we're attempting to do. I've thought about this for 4 years. How do we create the ability for somebody to lend an NFT safely so they get it back, and that someone who's getting collateral in return can price that? And anyway, we'll see how it works out, but I think we thought through the most difficult problem in the NFT lending market.
Come back on Crypto World when it goes live and tell us how it's going.
Oh, I definitely will.
So Axie Infinity was recently tied to a hack of more than $620 million because of a problem with a cross-chain bridge that lets users send cryptocurrency from one network to Ethereum. Now, this was among, if not the biggest hack in DeFi's history. Wax has a bridge of its own with Binance's BNB chain. I believe that it's going to have another one on Ethereum soon. Are you at all worried about security?
Yeah, anytime you are taking a token and sending it somewhere, there's a risk. You send it to the wrong address, or the place you send it gets hacked. These are hacking, and things getting compromised in the crypto space is a constant worry of ours. And as you point out, these bridges, the places where two different blockchains exchange tokens, is a vulnerable area. And for us, we have a lot of protocols that we follow to make sure that things that could go wrong don't go wrong. For instance, there is ways to access that bridge and literally take tokens from that bridge, and those access codes are called private keys. You can think of them as passwords. Well, where you store those passwords, do you write them down? Who has access to the passwords? If somebody logs in with those passwords, what sort of reports get generated? All that stuff. This is stuff that we've been thinking a lot about, both at Wax, our blockchain, but also the crypto industry in general. There's generally two types of exploits or hacks that take place. The first is there is an underlying problem with your software. There's a vulnerability, a line of code you didn't notice gave a backdoor to somebody. That's one. Those are frankly pretty rare. They're rare because these blockchains are exposed to the public 24/7 for years. And so if there is an exploit, it's probably going to be found very, very soon. So Wax has been around for 4+ years and has never had such a thing happen. It could, but it hasn't yet. So software vulnerabilities are less common. They're catastrophic when they happen because somebody could take control of the whole blockchain. The other is call it like a procedural type of hack, where somebody tricks you into giving them your passwords. That is what we call social engineering. If people know what that term means, that means the bad guy figures out a way. Maybe the bad guy masquerades as an employee or someone who should be authorized to get those passwords, and somebody gives them to them. So that's all about training. How you train the staff to double check and triple check things that doesn't happen. In the case of the Axie Infinity blockchain game, there were a few things that made this hack possible. Like many things in life, you can usually survive one black swan or one big hit, but when you get multiple, it cascades and catastrophe happens. So the Axie Infinity team didn't build their game on Ethereum or on another chain like Wax. They created their own blockchain. And now, so those guys have to be blockchain video game experts and then blockchain experts, right? Those skill sets aren't always in the same house, but they did that. And then for any transaction on a blockchain to be approved, it has to go through what we call a validator. And in the case of Axie, there are 9 validators, 9 like little groups that say, yes, this is valid. If 5 of the 9 say it's okay, then the transaction goes through. Axie Infinity itself operated 5 of the 9 validators. And so therefore, if you were able to hack Axie Infinity and get those passwords, you would have the passwords for 5 of the 9 validators and be able to do what you wanted. And that's what happened. Normally, each validator is a separate group spread somewhere in the world, and there's normally a lot more than 9. At Wax, we have dozens. And they're all distinct, all separate groups. And so you would need to hack a lot of those separate groups. Each would have one password for approving one transaction. So it would be a much more complicated thing for someone to hack us. It'd be easier to hack like an Amazon, with just one company. The Wax blockchain is decentralized and distributed. So no one group runs the blockchain. It's dozens of groups that do. And that makes it more resilient. In the case of Axie, I think because they were having a lot of volume and they were worried that some of the validators would be slower if they had random validators do the transaction processing. They decided to do it themselves. But of course, that meant they had to be extra careful that since they were a single group who could be hacked to take over the blockchain, which, by the way, is a sin in blockchain. You never want one hack, one group, if they do something to you, for the chain to be compromised, or in this case, a smart contract to be compromised. But that's what happened. And but things do happen, unfortunately. It's like everyone, no chain is perfect. But I do think the community was not as aware that the Axie Infinity blockchain game was actually operating on a private blockchain that Axie Infinity, the company, owned. It starts to look more like just a database then, as opposed to being on a Wax or an Ethereum, which are open, decentralized blockchains that no one group controls. So whenever you get that centralization, you're more vulnerable to any attack vector that compromises your blockchain keys or your smart contract keys. That's what happened there. The bad guys took 173,000 Ethereum and 25 million or so USDC stable coins. So at current prices, it's like over $600 million. I know the bad guys have laundered some of that, but since from the day a crypto is birthed to right now, where it's been, it's easy to trace the hacked items, the hacked tokens. But you can see where they're going, and it would be hard for these guys to bring in and try to sell them on a centralized exchange, because the centralized exchange has been made aware that these are stolen crypto. So you can't fence them on the centralized exchanges, but on decentralized exchanges, they can.